When Darth Sidious had begun to weave his Sith sorcery over the galaxy, never could he consider his future student to be burdened by a cybernetically enhanced suit. But for Anakin Skywalker, the power of the dark side had always been difficult for him to handle, and when he committed to the tutelage of Darth Sidious, he was consumed by his darkness, beginning his path to destruction with a brutal takeout of the Jedi Order. Not even Senator Amidala could stop him, as he inevitably encountered his old master. The world of Mustafar was the site for the close of Anakin and the birth of Vader, as the Jedi Knight was too engrossed in his new strength and was defeated by his wise master. As he burned on the scoldingly hot lava bank, his limbs started to melt into the surface, but as was his destiny, he continued to stay alive when rescued by Darth Sidious and his clones. In the renamed Surgical Reconstruction Center, the Sith Lord oversaw the building of a cybernetic machine with the aid of medical droids. But instead of making a flawless suit, he decided to leave it unfinished, denying Vader from reaching his full abilities and ensuring he cannot be betrayed. But what if Darth Vader upgraded his suit? Could he unlock his true powers? Or would he still be a slave to Sidious? As you're going to find out, the change of suit will affect the reign of the Empire. The layers of Vader's helmet and mask clicked into their positions as Vader took his first breath, and he used a large amount of strength just to swivel his neck to face his new master. Asking for the condition of Padme, he received the news even worse than his own death, as his wife had died at his own hand. Rage built inside Vader, and taking his first steps as the galaxy's most terrifying machine, he clenched his fist, and all of the droids and medical equipment in the room squeezed and ignited with Sith fury. The Emperor rubbed his hands together in glee as his new slave embraced the pain from the burns he had sustained and beckoned him to move away from the room. Vader was escorted to a nearby Star Destroyer as Sidious wanted him to get used to his newfound rage, and joined by Admiral Tarkin and an elite group of officers, the Emperor told Vader to marvel at the scale of the Death Star, and their ambitions of eliminating all light in the galaxy would soon become reality. Vader's next destination on this tour of terror was the smouldering remains of the Jedi Sanctuary, and on the ground, Mas Amedda conducted the burning of the Jedi and their blades, but Vader's thoughts were centered on getting out of the horrid suit. His master could sense his unease, and warned about his cost for deceit, then lured him with the thought of obtaining a new red kyber crystal by killing a Jedi. Vader salivated at this thought, and he immediately thought of Obi-Wan, taking his old lightsaber from the lava bank, and asked Sidious for the coordinates. Vader was frustrated that the location was an unknown rock formation in the mid-rim, and ignoring the shuttle that had been arranged for him, the new Sith took a heavily modified Republic attack shuttle and ensured that he could not be traced. Vader set off for the one area with the facilities to fix his suit, and he entered the coordinates for the Outer Rim, near the Naboo system. The Sith quickly navigated through hyperspace, and emerged at the foot of the Khalida Shoals medical station, which had been used during the Clone War to house around 60,000 wounded clones. Landing a shuttle with deathly silence in one of the designated areas, the sound of Vader's new boots on the hard floor shook all of the clones that had been reassigned to the area as he marched to one of the 8 entrances. The clones that had not been assigned to kill Jedi were quivering in the aura of Vader as he requested for his suit to be substituted for a better version. The medical droids carefully removed elements of his suit, and Vader screamed and writhed in agony as his wounds were being unveiled to the air again, but this time they would be treated with care. All of the scars from the duel with Obi-Wan and the burns to his body are slowly healed by the droids, but to his disgust, there was no additional materials to enhance his suit. Using his mechanical hand, he summoned an astromech, and together they managed to decipher the Republic codes, finding that Camino gave him the best chance of a better suit. The former Jedi Knight staggered to his feet, even more determined to avenge Obi-Wan for debilitating him so severely, and his new master for intentionally making him suffer. Aware that his master would likely be tracking him, Vader decided that the best course of action was to unleash all of the station BTLB Y-Wing bombers to attack the station. As Vader meant to do, the alarms to the station screamed across the area, and the clones alerted the newest division of Imperial security. The distraction enabled Vader to head for Camino, where he knew the clones would soon be decommissioned, and a new division of conscripted soldiers would strike fear in the galaxy. Arriving in one of the many hangars, the Sith realised that Sidious would have forbidden him from visiting such a location, as he was filled with memories of clones and former visits to the world. The recently stationed shock troopers couldn't fail to notice Vader, even though he tried to hide behind several crates of ammunition, and he was forced to invade their minds, so they could forget they had seen him. Whilst most intruders would have struggled to breach Kamino's defences, Vader was able to move towards his destination when he felt a familiar echo in the Force. Ignoring what his master would view as a weakness, he carefully navigated the reinforced security to find one of the medical bays that had been used for high-level brain scans during the Clone War era. Vader's armour is thrown to one side by the medical droids, and using fragments of reinforced durasteel that was left over from some of the starships, they locked the elements onto a new mould to create a new Tower of Evil. Vader felt the dark side buzzing through his body, and now he would not be denied from becoming the Sith that the Jedi and his master had feared. But if Vader had learned one lesson from his time as a Jedi, it was that patience was needed, and he set course for the route his master had intended for him to go to. As he dramatically soared back into his seat, the chilling hologram of his master flickered into view, and he should have assumed that he could not evade him. Sidious ordered Vader to return to Coruscant without finishing his mission of retrieving a lightsaber crystal, and the former Jedi devilishly grinned beneath his mask. Wasting little time in flying to the base of the former Jedi home, Vader landed by the feet of Sidious, and the Sith Lord looked at the new suit with disgust. Extending his hands and fingers, Vader summoned one of the blades that had not been burnt, and its azure blue colour illuminated the fading light as it reflected the intense lightning attack of his master. Vader knew that this was his chance to overthrow his master, and as he inched forward, he saw fear in the eyes of Sidious, who ignited his lightsaber. The two Sith battled for the throne, as the guards and officers watched in awe and horror from any windows or orifice they could find until they met in a blade lock. As the red and blue lightsabers fizzled together, Vader reached out with his strengthened hand and tore an electro star from the hold of one of the guards, then guided it into the back of his master. Sidious fell to the floor from shock, and lifting his lightsaber over his head, Vader coldly declared that this was his way of getting a red lightsaber crystal. Before he could be met with a sudden attack, Vader sliced the Sith Lord into thousands of shards, and the duel fell into silence. Eventually ordering for his new guards to clean the mess, Vader marched to the Senate building, where the senators had taken cover after hearing of the battle between the Sith. Vader had knowledge from his former life of how to satisfy these confused senators, and assured them that the schemes and lies created by his master would not continue under his new regime. The terrified senators are mostly unmoved, and Vader realised that he needed a different angle were he to maintain control over the galaxy. His first task was to find a new student, and one that would eliminate any survivors of Order 66, so he walked to his new chamber-holding office, and found the Grand Vizier Mas Amidala. The former vice chair swiveled to face the new Sith Lord, and raised his ceremonial staff at two royal guards, and they charged at Vader with their hidden vibroblades. Vader unsheathed the blade he had just taken from Sidious, and threw the lightsaber between their masks and helmets, as their bodies folded to the ground. Directing the lightsaber to the throat of Mas Amidala, the Tragrian told Vader that Sidious had often gone to the Works District in secret, and the Sith released his hold on the Grand Vizier. Alongside the surviving clones of the Jedi Purge, the Sith Lord ordered for his soldiers to divide themselves through the Works District as he entered the abandoned Limerge Tower. Vader could sense that the building had been untouched for a number of months, but by the base of the area, a battered protocol droid flickered, and Vader used his knowledge of droids to fix it, and he discovered that many of his master's artifacts had been moved to Coruscant's medical facility. The Sith Lord marched over to the tower which had been abandoned, before he had been forced into his new suit, and descending to the lower levels, he can hear the faint humming of force cages nearby. Within each of these cages was a Jedi Sentinel being tortured at deliberate intervals, and Vader could sense their resistance to stay in the light was fading with each moment. Leaving them to continue their fall down the dark side, he headed further down the tower, where the holocrons were located. The walls were now decorated in ancient Sith writing, but Vader could sense one series of runic lines was already used, so he subtly moved the wall inwards, revealing the vault that he wished to discover. Vader was greeted with a large area where holocrons and artifacts were lavishly shown, and he soaked in their force energy as he returned to the Jedi Sentinels. The former Jedi guards were now simmering with hate, but Vader knew none of these Jedi would be a worthy student, so he left for one of the 4 landing stages and left Coruscant in search of the second Sith. As Vader engaged the autopilot system aboard his ship, his guide was not a predetermined set of coordinates, but his new and enhanced connection to the Force. Once Vader retracted himself from his intense Sith meditation, he found that the ship had left the core worlds in Coruscant, and he was heading for a maze of hyperspace lanes, and buried amongst them was the world of Bracca. A historical account from the onboard database revealed that the world had been the subject of a battle at the end of the Clone War that had been won by the 13th Battalion, but as the world moved into the sight of the Sith Lord's increased vision, he could only see the remnants of what had been a destructive battle between the Jedi and the clones. Vader was disgusted at the status of the Jedi had yet to be confirmed, but the Force had not brought him to Bracca for such insignificance, so he glided onto one of the platforms, which had been used by the local guild to bring scrap to be broken down and sold. Whilst word did not reach the guild about the new leader of the galaxy, the patrolling guild members did not hesitate in moving to one side, as Vader marched down from the ship, took several menacing steps forward, then locked his head onto one of the abandoned Venator-class Star Destroyers. Without his new suit, the journey to his target would have needed a land speeder, but now he moved from one abandoned destroyer to another, with the cold elegance of a Force ghost. Finding the bridge he had locked his focus on, Vader used the Force to sweep all of the irrelevant debris, and found a box of cylindrical data devices known as computer spikes, then used them to infiltrate the ship's database to find a list of missing Jedi. As he started to scroll through the missing Masters and Knights, he received a transmission from Governor Williff Tarkin on Kamino, who had been searching for him since the fall of Sidious and the interrogation of Mas Amedda. Whilst Vader tolerated the Admiral's more active method to fighting the war during his former life as a Jedi, Vader saw him as a tool for Sidious and sneered beneath the layers of his helmet as he heard that an elite squad of clones was arriving on the world for their own mission. This had obviously been a continuation of Sidious's Order 66, but given his enjoyment in killing the Jedi, he now felt insulted as someone else was taking his job and wanted to take the mission for himself. As Vader attached the data cylinder to his belt, he saw 3 new class attack shuttles hover overhead, then descend into the nearby wreckage of a Venator-class Star Destroyer. The Sith Lord followed the elite squad from a distance, before hearing the names of the Bad Batch through the comm chatter, and he sensed a chance to find the Jedi he wanted. Lifting a small segment of a destroyer's bridge, Vader threw it to the other side of the graveyard, and its landing caused a small crate of photonic charges to detonate, and Crosshair's squad thought it had been caused by the clones. Vader's mask hid his amusement at how he had tolerated such inferior beings as Jedi, who had been deceived with such ease, and he decided to break the clone's initial target into 2. Vader heard shouts of fear in the Force, and used his agility to move to the broken artillery deck. Through the falling embers of a once heroic destroyer, it was Echo and Tech that had the misfortune of facing Vader, and the Sith Lord showed no signs of his connection with the clones during the Clone War by lifting them into the air. Vader used the dark side ability of Force Invasion to discover that the clones had recently been in contact with Commander Rex as he released them to ignite his lightsaber. As the Sith Lord is about to draw the clones into the scolding blade of plasma, he is thrown back by Crosshair's elite squad, who had discovered Vader's distraction and had launched a crate of thermal detonators between Vader and the clones. As Echo and Tech ran back into the broken half of the Venator, Vader casually held his hand in front of him and deflected all of the shots from the clones. One of the clones foolishly told Vader that they did not accept him as the new leader of their squad, and the Sith Lord reacted by clenching his fist, breaking the neck of the clones, and squeezing all life out of him as he fell to the floor. Crosshair gnawed at his toothpick as if nothing had occurred, and gesticulated to his clones to terminate the traitors rather than attack Vader, as he was a good soldier who followed orders. The Sith Lord had achieved his goal on Bracca, and thought it was a waste of his valuable time if he chased after the fugitives, so he walked back to his ship and ordered the remainder of the guard on Coruscant to hunt for the fugitive clone CT-7567. At the footsteps of the decaying Jedi home, Commander Fox knew that Rex would be difficult to catch, but with an obsession to serve Darth Vader, he decided to take one of the beaten low-altitude assault gunships, and with several of the Coruscant Guard, set course for the outer rim world of Utapau. Eventually arriving on the world rebuilding, after its war that it didn't even want, Fox and a small band of clones are greeted by the ground clone commander Cody. The de facto leader of the 212th Battalion had already finished his work clearing the sub-levels of the city, and hearing for the search of Commander Rex, he turned away from Fox and back to the direction of Oddball. For the first time since the execution of Order 66, Cody started to fight against his control chip, as unlike the traitorous Jedi Kenobi, Cody still viewed Rex as a clone and a brother. As he struggled to fight against his programming, the Coruscant Guard looked bemused at his behaviour, and Cody scurried to one of the lower levels, claiming he was unwell. The clone commander crawled and struggled his way to a holotable, which was in a secret room that General Grievous had used, and found an old code that he knew Rex would use. As time seemed to be in a standstill, Cody could hear Fox in the background of his obscured hearing as the flickering figure of Rex finally greeted him. The hooded Rex looked visibly weathered from Order 66, but his somber demeanour changed when he saw the fight within Cody, and he instructed him to find a way to hide from the chasing clones, whilst Rex travelled to Utapau. Aboard his BTLB Y-Wing bomber, Rex knew that saving Cody was an enormous risk, but having seen so many clones fall, he could not let Cody join the graves, and using his vast knowledge of all the hyperspace lanes, he made it to the Outer Rim largely untroubled. But as he entered Utapau's system, he knew that something was amiss, and as he glanced at the onboard radar, a large fleet was closing in on his location. Rex knew that he was being caught by Fox's forces, so tilted his controls downwards, and the bomber dived downwards as well, before Rex chose the rim of the sinkhole to rest the ship. Silently exiting the Y-Wing, Rex crouched onto his elbows, and used his macro binoculars to find a signal from Cody, and saw he had moved closer to the surface, but was limited in his movement by the influence of his control chip. To avoid the clones led by Fox, Rex used an ascension cable to slide down the sinkhole, using the cover of the levels in the buildings to hide himself from view. Arriving at the 10th level, he saw Cody crawling onto the floor, next to a number of the clone helmets of the 212th Battalion, and Rex assured Cody that he would soon be relieved of the suffering. Dragging the struggling Cody to a hidden stretch in the vicinity, the former clone also had the foresight to send the native Varactyls to cause chaos on all the levels, giving the chance for Rex to recruit several astromechs to remove Cody's chip. Once he had awoken from his surgery, Cody looked dazed, as he couldn't believe he had thought about killing Rex, as they were disturbed by the voices of Fox's battalion. Rex realigned his ascension cable for their final climb, and as the clones continued their search, they were near the top when the rock face started to slide. Cody threw his own ascension cable onto a different section of the cliff, but the clones found themselves being dragged back to the floor. Angling their necks against the attack, they found that there was only one enemy moving on the ground, and it was Darth Vader, who had only recently been announced to the galaxy. Rex had seen enough of the Force to know it was useless to resist, so both clones decided to give in to Vader for now, as they were allowed to stand when they hit the ground. Commander Fox offered to execute the rogue clones, but Vader asked them to move aside, and once they moved back into the skies, the Sith Lord invited them to join him, as their knowledge could be useful to hunting any insurgents. The clones saluted in unison, but not for Vader, rather for what they believed in, and Vader soon began to invade the minds of the clones. It was only then Rex could see the man behind the mask, as he recognised the actions belonged to his old general Anakin Skywalker, and his head was almost taken off of his neck. Such were the forces from Vader in his shock. Cody begged for Vader to at least give them honourable deaths, and to their astonishment, Vader relented in order for Commander Fox to return. But as the clone gunship started to return to the floor, Vader was forced to shield himself as it detonated into thousands of shards. Through the fiery remains, Vader looked to see a T6 shuttle, and at its helm was the one he wanted to be a Sith student, and it was his old Padawan Ahsoka Tano. Vader stood from the initial attack and detonation, then stretched out his hand to grab the T6 shuttle in the air, which froze Ahsoka as she wrestled the controls. Since the devastation of Order 66, Ahsoka had been reticent in using the Force, but now with little choice, she knew she would struggle to free the ship, so decided to focus it on the missile launchers. Using the Force to release one of the missiles, Vader is thrown back from the blast, and Rex and Cody are given time to jump aboard. Ahsoka and the clones tried to take advantage of Vader's fall to leave, but they found themselves surrounded by Commander Fox's recovered gunships, and Vader orders them to surrender or be killed at once. Ahsoka knew that the Sith was targeting her, given she had been a Jedi, so in a selfless act, she ignored the cries of the clones, and acrobatically soared down to the level of Vader, then whistled for the Varactyl to return. With Vader releasing his grip, the clones used the chaos to fire the remaining missiles and evade the other clones, as Ahsoka collected a fallen Electro Staff and dueled Darth Vader. The fighting style of the Sith felt eerily familiar, and as the shards of Vader's mask fell off from the previous blasts, her moment of realization meant she lowered her staff, and one of the Coruscant guards stunned her, leaving Vader to order for her to be taken to his ship. Above the world, Rex and Cody were alone with the other ships chasing Ahsoka, and their silence cut through the air in their souls, but they knew they couldn't fight a machine such as Vader without the Force. Rex set coordinates for a secret rendezvous location, and during their hyperspace journey, the clone used the astromech and transmission codes that Ahsoka left behind to find Bail Organa. The concerned hologram of Organa flickered into view, and the absence of Ahsoka gave a dilemma for him to think about, given his scheme with Obi-Wan and Yoda. The Senator decided that Ahsoka would be worth the risk, but with Vader and Ahsoka's location unknown, he needed his small network of rebels to hunt it down, before he could even consider asking the Jedi for a rescue effort. Back aboard Vader's ship, the Sith Lord had sensed that there would be enemies wanting to retrieve Ahsoka, so he ordered for Commander Fox to divide the fleet and throw them off course, whilst he boarded his newly built I-Class Star Destroyer. Having ordered for many of Sidious's Sith artifacts to be transferred, he would now use a force cage that was looted from the era of the Jedi Civil War to detain Ahsoka. As the former Jedi Padawan awoke from her slumber, she felt herself levitating in midair, but the force restraints denied any thoughts of a getaway, as well as being surrounded by Vader's officers. Before the officers are about to mock her, she is somewhat saved by the Sith Lord himself, and he ordered for his staff to move back to their usual roles, as he extended his hands and felt electricity flowing through him, then shot a lightning attack at his old Jedi Padawan, and now his new Sith student. Ahsoka never felt agony like this in her entire life, and her efforts to resist were futile, as Vader wanted her to suffer for how she had abandoned him when he needed her the most, and show her the limitless dark side powers that she had missed under the Jedi. But the former Jedi continued to resist, with no desire for more power, and Vader would need more time to break her, when a terrified officer stumbled to his side. Vader hid his disgust at the distraction, but the officer revealed that the homing beacon on the T6 shuttle had been a success, and the clones had docked near the Alderaan system in the core worlds. The Sith Lord gazed out of the window at his stars, and resisting the urge to leap into his starfight and chase the shuttle, he decided that he would continue to track their location, sensing that there would be enemies that would try to rescue Ahsoka. Vader's senses had not betrayed him, as Rex and Cody were not willing to wait for Bail Organa and his network, so taking matters in their own hands, they went to search for Obi-Wan. Although they knew Senator Organa wouldn't disclose the Jedi Master's location, they were now on the Tantive 3, and as Organa left for his home on Alderaan, the guards were unmoved as Rex entered the Senator's room with R2-D2. The astromech had stayed behind and understood the intentions of the clones, so used his interface arm to connect to the ship's database, finding that the Jedi had travelled from one of the docks on Nar Shaddaa. The clones did not need to go to the smuggler's moon to know that it was a transit for the world of Tatooine, somewhere that they knew Anakin Skywalker hated. Leaving the dock of Bail Organa's ship, Rex set course for the desert world, continuing to convince himself and Cody that this would be a logical location for the ingenious Jedi Master to hide, but they still had the issue of how to find him on the barren land. Landing on the outskirts of Anchorhead, where they knew that there would be less security, the clones wished they could retain R2-D2, but when they searched for their macro binoculars, they found the droid had been more intelligent than they had thought. A singular data cylinder resided among their stocks, and when they activated the device, they found its coordinates located to the southern border of the Jundland Wastes, and among the Great Chod Sulfla region. Starting the T6 shuttle again, the clones turned in shock at the main monitor, which showed several silhouettes moving closer to their hull, and with their sole missiles already used, Rex and Cody get out to fight. With his shorter range D-17 hand blasters, Rex distracted the ships, which were new variants of the Alpha 3 Nimbus class V-Wing starfighter, whilst Cody mounted his DC-15A blaster rifle and used the hill of a sand dune to deal the killing shots. Such pilots were no match for these veterans, but they knew that they were being tracked, so after removing the homing beacon beneath the ship's hull, they set course for the coordinates that they had been given. As the clones glided across the sand, they could hear a great stirring from behind them, and the settlement of Anchorhead had blared into life, so their battle had not ended. Using the sand to blind the chasing enemies, Rex finally arrived at their coordinates, where they saw a hooded Obi-Wan Kenobi standing outside the moisture farm. Obi-Wan assumed a battle stance at the sight of the clones, but lowered his hood after sensing no threat, and when Cody and Rex got out of the ship, he told them that they should leave immediately. The clones were not deterred, and told the exiled Master about the fate of Ahsoka, as well as the existence of Darth Vader, causing the Jedi Master to stroke his beard in thought. Allowing himself a glance at the last home, Obi-Wan didn't know if he had the strength to face his old Padawan again, but he believed that Vader had not been made aware of Luke, so he would be safe at the last home. The Jedi Master was fortunate that he had not followed through with his idea to bury his and Anakin's lightsabers, so he joined the clones before Anchorhead's security force could catch them. When they left the Tatooine system, Bail Organa's hologram arrived in time to give them the coordinates for Vader, which were set for the Sessuena sector. Obi-Wan had studied the area in the Jedi archives and knew that it had unusual political elections, as well as it being the home of Williff Tarkin, which convinced him they were heading the right way. The Jedi and their clones met with the rebels in the nearby system of Sullust, as they discussed how they would go on to attack the Devastator, and they decided the T6 shuttle would be a decoy, whilst Obi-Wan became one of the squadron, flying over the heavy turbo laser turrets. The small band of rebels all left Sullust, and straight into the skies above Eriadu, then wasted no time in executing their strategy. Amongst the mix of Clone Wars starfighters, Obi-Wan could feel the darkness of Vader, and as his fleet started to draw the fire of the activating turrets, he knew that Vader had wanted him to arrive for a rescue. The Jedi Master allowed the tractor beam to draw him into the docking bay, and with the sound of the battle above fading, he made his move. Showing that he hadn't lost any of his agility, he acrobatically somersaulted onto the ground and drew a flawless arc with his lightsaber around the new soldiers, sending them tumbling several levels. Obi-Wan continued to move through the Star Destroyer, and as he sensed Vader and Ahsoka getting closer, he could feel that Togruta's resistance to the dark side was flagging, and he considered he would have to fight alone. So before he entered the turbo lift, Obi-Wan used the Force to hold on to one of the V-Wing starfighters, circulating above the ship, then threw it into the bridge and the deflector shield generator, which he thought could give the rebels a chance to join his battle. The alarms were immediately screaming around the destroyer, as Obi-Wan moved around the rushing officers and soldiers to the turbo lift for a final meeting with Vader. A seemingly endless climb to Vader's floor ended with a juddering halt, and Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber, then walked into Vader's room. The Sith Lord swiveled from within his chamber, and with his helmet locking onto his suit, stood tall and told Obi-Wan he would finish what he couldn't on Mustafar. Vader moved in a blur, eager to end the duel and show the power of the dark side. But Obi-Wan knew this, and decided to dodge all of Vader's attacks, and frustrate him by not attacking him. As the Sith's rage continued to grow, Obi-Wan was able to activate a series of levers on the wall, and Ahsoka felt herself freed from her restraints. The former Jedi was wavering from light to dark after her torture under Vader, and like her master, she could change the fate of the galaxy. Using the Force to surprise them both, and send them into Vader's bacta tank, the gelatinous substance made them slow down, and as they got to their feet, the destroyer was hit by several blasts from a rebel cruiser, and Obi-Wan told Ahsoka to leave, whilst he resisted Vader. Hobbling to the turbo lift, Ahsoka found the rebels had infiltrated the Executor, and Rex carried her to the safety of the rebel fleet. As the other rebels followed, Ahsoka almost fell back to the floor, with the losses of both Anakin and Obi-Wan in the Force, and she suddenly felt a great burden to carry their legacies. With news moving across the galaxy, the civilians started to overthrow their ruling forces, and Bail Organa gathered all of the highest ranking allies to meet at the old reigning embassy in the Cantham House on Coruscant. The new alliance discussed how they would prevent the mistakes made under the old leadership, and after the session, Bail Organa gave Ahsoka the location of Grandmaster Yoda. The exiled Jedi decided to take a less active role in the Jedi Order, but served on the council with survivors such as Eth Koth and Quinlan Voss, who revolutionised the Jedi Code. Although Vader had inflicted a brief flurry of terror, Ahsoka and Rex dedicated their lives to ensure he would be remembered as a hero, rather than what he had become. That is it for What If Darth Vader upgraded his suit. If you'd like to see more What Ifs, please like this video, turn on that notification bell, click that subscribe button on this channel, as well as on my other channel What If Films. And as always, leave a comment on what if you'd all like to see next, and how I can improve my videos. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.